Well, it's good to see all of you this morning. If you weren't here at the top, I would just encourage you, hopefully grab it on the way in. Communion elements, we'll be celebrating communion together at the end of the service. Before we jump into the message, I want to let you know something happening next week. It's our next open house, and so if you've never been to one of those, it's really a great next step for you. And so this room is nice, but for this to really become your church and to get plugged in, that's a great next step. And so it'll be immediately following this service next week. We'll feed you, take care of your kids. It's less than an hour. You hear my heart, mission, vision, values of the church, meet the staff, tour of the church, and it's a really great way for you to figure out, okay, what's next and how do I get plugged in? I like what's going on here. So that's next Sunday. It's absolutely free. You can sign up or just show up, but it'll be next Sunday about 12 or 12:15 immediately following this service. Now, we are in week 2 of a series on prayer and looking at different aspects of our prayer life. Kicked it off last week, and last week at the 9:30 service, my oldest son, who's 15, attended that service, and he typically does. He's usually back there volunteering or something. And then last Sunday afternoon, we were at home, and he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Dad, I was there in your service today." I was like, "Oh, cool." He goes, "That was a pretty good message." I was like, "Cool." He's like, yeah. He's like, "I just got one suggestion to improve." I was like, "Oh, please tell me, my 15-year-old son, this I have been dying to hear." He's like, "Well, sitting there and, you're talking about this series and the next 4 weeks, how you kind of spelled the word pray and you kind of told everybody what's going on." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should have had a slide up there so people could have seen it." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I think people were like trying to write it down. You said it quickly and just kind of moved on. So you really need to have a slide." So I was like, "Oh, I'm always trying to get better as a leader, as a person, even if it's being taught by a 15-year-old person who thinks he knows it all." Anyway, so without further ado, let me show you the 4 weeks on prayer, and it's going to spell out pray, P-R-A-Y. 4 weeks of this: persistence, reassurance, awareness, and yearning. Persistence, reassurance, awareness, and yearning. Last week was persistence. This week is reassurance, and then the next 2 weeks will be awareness and yearning. And so that slide is courtesy of my son, Daniel. Now, we're talking about reassurance today, so if you've got a Bible, we will be in Psalm chapter 23. Psalm chapter 23, even if you're not really a church person, you're probably very familiar with that psalm. Psalm chapter 23. While you're turning there, I'm going to read a psalm out of Psalm chapter 42. It'll set up where we're going today, kind of tee us up, and I'll read it and I'll pray for us, and we'll jump into the message. So Psalm chapter 42, verses 5 through 8, here's what the psalmist writes. "Why am I discouraged? Why is my heart so sad? I will put my hope in God. I will praise him again, my Savior and my God. Now I am deeply discouraged, but I will remember you. Even from distant Mount Hermon, the source of the Jordan, from the land of Mount Mizar. I hear the tumult of the raging seas as your waves and surging tides sweep over me. But each day the Lord pours his unfailing love upon me. And through each night I sing his songs, praying to God who gives me life." Let me pray for us. Jesus, I thank you for who you are. My prayer is that in this moment that the Spirit of God would begin to move in this place. You begin to shape our hearts and minds and souls, and that we would not leave this place the same way we came in, that we be forever empowered for the change by the Spirit of God. My prayer, Lord, is that all distractions in our lives would be pushed to the side. You would be the sole focus of our time and attention today. Jesus, we love you. And ask these things in your precious and holy name. Amen. Well, my second son, David, is 13, but when he was born, he was diagnosed with a symptom called craniosynostosis. And what that is that he was born without a soft spot. And so his skull was fused, and his skull was growing front to back, but not side to side. And the remedy for it, the doctor says they had to go in and do some major skull surgery, take out a chunk of his skull, create a soft spot. Then he'd have to wear a helmet for about a year and a half while his brain developed and formed, and then his skull had a chance to grow. And that was diagnosed like when he was 8 or 9 weeks old. The surgery was supposed to happen when he was 3 months old. That's when he'd be old enough to have it. Daniel at that time was 2, and so Brianna had been parents for 2 years. And to say that we were nervous wrecks would be a gross understatement. We were nervous wrecks. We didn't know what was going on. We were 2 years in this parenting thing, and our son's going to have the surgery. The surgery came with a lot of risk, and it was a very high-risk surgery, very intrusive surgery, but it was what needed to be done. And so we were wrestling through all that. I was a pastor at the time, kind of frustrated, all this type of stuff, praying. We think it's the right thing, think it's what God was doing, but there's still all this unknown fear, uncertainty, and just kind of wrestling through all of it. About a month or so before the surgery was going to happen, a buddy of mine is in Nashville. He knew what was going on, and he called me. He goes, hey, I think you should call this pastor friend of mine. His name is Blake Bergstrom. I think Blake can help you out. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a pastor myself. I'm good. He's like, no, just call Blake. I've given a heads up of what's going on. About a day or two later, I pick up the phone. I call Blake. Hey, Blake, this is Chris. Hey, so-and-so said you'd be calling. Yeah, I'm calling. He goes, I think I can help out. And I was like, that's nice. I appreciate it. I know the Bible verses. But what do you got? He's like, well, I know what you're going through. I was like, oh, you know what I'm going through? He goes, yeah. And he paused. He goes, my oldest daughter had the same surgery when she was a few months old. And for the next 30 to 45 minutes, he began to spell out for me what I would be going through. He goes, here's what you're going to feel if you haven't felt it already. Here's what you and your wife are going to be feeling together. Here's what you're going to be thinking about as a dad. Here's what's going to happen the day of the surgery. And then he began to remind me of who God is in my life. And it wasn't anything I didn't know, but it was just to remind me. He began to pastor me for that 30 or 45 minutes. I'd never met Blake before, would not meet him till years later. But on that phone call for about 30 or 45 minutes, he just began to remind me of who God is and what he's done in my life. And at the end of the call, he just told me, he goes, Chris, it's going to be okay. And I know you're nervous and I know you're anxious, but God is still on his throne and it is going to be okay. And I share that with you because I don't know what you're going through, but all of us need reassurance in our lives that it's going to be okay. Nervousness, anxiety, fear, things that are going on, health issues, financial issues, marital issues, school issues, all of this stuff you just need to know. You just need to be reassured that it's going to be okay. And what Blake did for me, and what you'll see throughout both the Old Testament and the New Testament, was reminded me of what God has done, who God is, as a reassurance in my life that it's going to be okay. I'll phrase it for you this way, is that remembrance of what God has done leads to reassurance of what God is going to do. Remembrance of what God has done in the past leads to reassurance of what he's going to do in the future. And you see this in the Old Testament. God would tell the nation of Israel time and time again, don't forget the Lord your God. Remember the Lord your God. As you go forward, don't forget, remember back. Fast forward to the New Testament in John chapter 16. Before Jesus goes to the cross, he's telling his disciples, listen, it's going to get bad. It's going to get difficult. Remember my words. Take heart because I've overcome the world. In the Last Supper, he would say, do this to remember me. Jesus knew it was going to be difficult, but to remember back to who he was. This idea of reassurance of our heart and our soul is wonderful, but it begins with remembering of all that God has done and who God is and what he's doing. Today we're looking at Psalm 23, and it's arguably the most famous chapter in all the Bible. It's a chapter full of comfort. It's a chapter full of peace. It's a chapter full of reassurance. And it's reassurance for me over the years as I've read it when I'm really excited and when I'm in the lowest of lows. And God has reassured me through this very simple chapter because it's a reminder of all the things that God has done. I read a quote, a guy named Charles Spurgeon, famous pastor, but he had this publication called The Treasury of David. And it was an ongoing publication that he would just kind of outline different chapters. And when he got to chapter 23, he referenced a clergyman named Henry Ward Beecher, and he writes this. He says, it, meaning Psalm 23, he goes, it has comforted the noble host of the poor. It has sung courage to the army of the disappointed. It has poured balm and consolation into the heart of the sick, of captives in dungeons, of widows in their pinching griefs, of orphans in their loneliness. Dying soldiers have died easier as it was read to them. Ghastly hospitals have been illuminated. It has visited the prisoner and broken his chains. Psalm 23 is this powerful little psalm written by King David. And honestly, I could spend weeks dissecting this psalm and all that it has. It is full of rich, powerful truths. But today, I just want to take a really high 30,000-foot view of it. And I just want to point out a few things for you to pray for, that the Lord to remind you of, so that when he's reminded you of it, it would begin to reassure your heart and your soul. And so I just want to point out a few of those things and then show you how David responds to the reminders of the Lord in his life. Psalm chapter 23, verse 1, we're going to pick it up. Here's what David writes. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength, and he guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. First thing I'd love you to think about or write down, it's a simple little prayer, is this, is Lord, remind me of your provision. Lord, remind me of your provision. And David writes this, the Lord is my shepherd. He gives me all that I need. And he's writing about the Lord's provision. And David's response to the Lord's provision is contentment. He says, he is my shepherd. I have all that I need. And he lets me rest in green meadows. And you see David, as he's writing, it's really cool because he takes a very personal angle to the Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He makes me lie down in green meadows. It's a very personal thing. You do not see David comparing the Lord's provision he's given him to the Lord's provision that he's given someone else. Lord, you provided me with this, and that's great. You provided me with a family, or with this paycheck, or with this house, or with this job, or with this situation. I appreciate that. But Lord, what you provided them, Lord, I'd like you to provide me with their job, with their marriage, with their physical appearance, with their health situation, with their neighborhood. Lord, I would like for you to provide me what you provided to them. And you don't see David doing that. It's a very personal thing, and he walks with contentment. Why? Because the Lord has provided all that he has needed. And I don't know what your situation is in life, but my guess is you're going through and wondering, is God going to provide? Is he going to show up? And the answer is absolutely, he is the provider. But don't miss this. He provides all that we need, not necessarily all that we want. He provides all that we need, not necessarily the same needs that he's provided for someone else. And for so many of us, we compare the provision God's given us to the provision he's given someone else. And you don't see David do that. It's a very personal thing. The Lord is my shepherd. He's given me all that I need. And he walks in contentment. Why? Because the Lord provided for him all his needs. Earlier this week, I was talking with my dad. We were reminiscing about some family stories growing up, and I was reminded, when I was in middle school, my dad and I, we'd go hiking and camping a lot. That was kind of our thing. And there were some really cool parks out in West Texas that we would drive out to, really tall mountains, and we'd love to backpack and hike and camp and that kind of stuff. We're reminded, we went out this one park, and we were going to climb this really big peak mountain and going to hike up there, camp out for a few days, and then hike back down. And it was one of those big backpacks. We pack in all of our food, water, all that kind of stuff. And we checked in at the little, welcome center there, and you get the map. And this was 30 years ago, so this is long before GPS and digital things. They gave you a paper map, and it's basically, here you are, here's where you want to go, follow this little line. And so we opened it up, and we kind of planned everything out. And let's just say that the paper map that they gave us wasn't exactly as accurate as it needed to be for the trail that we were on. So we looked at it, here we are, we're going to go here, and we looked at it, and on that it had like three little switchbacks to this section, and you'll be right there. The reality is, as we begin to climb and hike up this mountain, it was about 30 long, treacherous back and forth switchbacks, way more difficult and extraneous than we thought. So much so, and it's West Texas and it's hot desert sun. By the time we got up to the top where we made camp, we had finished all of the water that we had brought for 3 days. We had just pounded water. It was hot. We were tired, way more strenuous than we thought. We were at the top, had no more water, and we made the decision, we're just going to camp here tonight, and we got to hike right back down in the morning just because we don't have any water. We camp, wake back up, hiking back down the next morning, and we make it as far as we can. Then all of a sudden the sun begins to rise, and it just gets hot. And I've been thirsty, and you've been thirsty. This was a different level of thirst. This is dehydration. Mouth is all, no saliva. I mean, it's one of those where if we don't get water soon, bad things are going to happen. And it got real quiet. We're just trying to walk, and we're both just dehydrated. And we come around this corner, about halfway down, and on the ground in this little crevice of this rock was this nasty little puddle of muddy water. Just one of those, it was muddy and had little insects crawling on top of it. But he and I both look at it, and we instantly bend down and start drinking this nasty, muddy water. And we both agree to this day that that was the best water we have ever tasted. Why? Because we needed what? We were dying of thirst, and it was provided for us. How foolish would it be if we came upon this, we're dying of thirst, we see that, we're going, oh gosh, I kind of wish it would be a bottle of Gatorade there instead. Golly, I wish they'd had a vending machine here. That would be awesome. You look at the water. This is not what they sell in the grocery store. It'd been foolish of us to compare that provision to anything else. Why? Because we needed water. That was the provision, and it was there in our time of need. When God provides, you walk with contentment. Why? Because it's what you need, and it's what He's provided. And quit comparing your provision to somebody else's provision from the Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. And what's interesting is He says He makes me walk in green meadows or in green pastures. I'll just say this just as a free caveat. If you're following the Lord and He leads you, the pasture that He has you in is plenty green enough. And whatever pasture you're in, it's so easy to go, their life looks greener. Their marriage looks greener. Their financial situation looks greener. But the Lord provides the pasture. He provides the water. Walk in contentment with the Lord's provision. In verse 4, it's interesting, if you've never noticed this about Psalm 23, is that David shifts voices. So the first part of Psalm 23, he's talking about God. And then the last part of Psalm 23, he's talking to God. So the first three verses, it's about Him. The last three verses are to God. Here's what he says to God. Look at verse 4. He says, even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Second thing I just want to point out as a reminder for you to work in your prayer life is simply this. Lord, remind me of your protection. Lord, remind me of your protection. And David is talking out to the Lord. He's going, listen, when I walk through the dark valley, you are there. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. David's response to the Lord's protection is David walks with courage. He walks without fear. Why? Because the Lord guards, the Lord protects him. So he doesn't say, I'm walking around the valley of the shadow of death. I'm walking over it. I'm skipping it. He says, no, I'm walking through it. And I can walk through it because the Lord is with me. He'll guard and protect me. I'm sitting in the presence of my enemies. I'm looking at my opposition in the eye. Why? Because God has prepared the feast for me. And if God's prepared the feast for me, He will protect me. And so David begins to walk with courage. If you study the life of David, he had plenty of enemies and plenty of opposition and plenty of reasons to be fearful or afraid. But he is reminded, and what I think the Lord is reminding us, is that the Lord is one who protects and who guards. And David's response to that understanding that says, I will walk with courage. I'm not going to go around the dark valley. I'm going to go through it. I'm not going to be afraid and miss out on my enemies. I'm going to sit there in the presence of them because God is leading me there and He will not fail me nor abandon me. Lord, remind me of your protection. And when He does, you begin to respond with courage. And yes, you may be walking through, many of you might be in the middle of the darkest valley you've ever been in right now, and you're walking through it. Keep walking because the Lord is with you. You might be sitting in the middle of opposition at work, at school, with relationships. You're there and you walk with courage because the Lord will guard and protect you. And if this can move from your mind to your heart and you really grasp this, it does give you a different sense of courage. Because when things are guarded, when things are protected, like you just walk differently, you act differently. If you really understand that God guards and protects you, then you walk through life not arrogant, not boastful, but courageous. Going, listen, what will be is what will be. I'm trusting that the Lord will protect me. When things are guarded, when things are protected, you just act very differently. Our 4 kids, they're from age 15 down to 7. And when we first started having kids, Brie and I just made the decision when it came to our house, we were going to decorate it, we were going to build it, we were going to design it, we were going to have things in our house that essentially you could drive a tank in the middle of our house and it wouldn't do much damage. We just protected things, didn't buy fancy things because we wanted our 4 kids just to go and do and just not worry about things. And what's fascinating is when people come over to our house with little kids, especially if it's their first time ever to our house, they ring the doorbell and the parents are just like super nervous. They don't break anything. And I see the nervousness on the parents. And I look at the parents and I look at the kids. I go, listen, you absolutely cannot break anything. Nothing you do, you will not break anything. You go have fun, do whatever it is that you do need to do. And if by chance you do break something, don't worry because it is so cheap, we can replace it quite easily. And when I say that, it's almost like the parents go, whew. And they let their kids just kind of run around. And then why? Because things are guarded and protected, like the table down in the basement. I literally built out of steel gas pipe and wood. I'm like, it's just kind of indestructible. And so the parents, they ease and relax. Now, it is very different when we take our 4 kids over to somebody else's house, especially if they're empty nesters. Because empty nesters, I think, forget how much damage 4 kids can do. And so we know going over to this house, there's going to be nice furniture. There's going to be white couches and carpets. And it's going to stay white. And why? Because they're very clean and neat, and they don't have 4 kids. And so when we go over there, you just need to know this is happening. This is real talk right here. Before we go in the house, we keep all 4 kids in the car, and Brianna and I just have a mom-dad talk with them, going, listen, the house we're going to is very nice. Don't touch anything. Don't look at anything. Don't sit down anything. In fact, if you can hold your breath the whole time we're there, that would probably be best for everybody. Just don't fight, argue. Why? We are on eggshells because nothing is protected or guarded. We know what kind of damage can be done. But when there's protection, when there's guards in place, when you understand that the Lord is your protector, that he guards you, then you walk through that dark valley, not arrogantly, not boastfully, but confidently and with courage. You sit in the presence of opposition of your enemies, not boastfully, not arrogantly, but confidently and with courage. Why? Because the Lord is your protector. And then the final verse, verse 6. He says, surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Final thing I'd love you to think about or write down or pray this week is this. Lord, remind me of your proximity. Lord, remind me of your proximity. The fact that David is writing is reminded of the closeness or the nearness of God. He goes, your goodness and your unfailing love, they will pursue me or they will follow me. That God is a heavenly Father that is near and close to us. He's not a God up in heaven that stiff arms and says, deal with all your stuff, then we'll talk. He's a God in James chapter 4, verse 8 says, draw close to God and he will draw close to you. So David is reminded, and what I think the Lord is reminding us today, is that God is close in proximity. And what David's response is one of commitment. He goes, and I will dwell or I will live in the house of the Lord forever. So he goes, God is close. He's pursued me. He's followed me all the days of my life. And so my response is one of commitment, going, and I will pursue him or I will chase after him. Lord, remind me of your proximity, of the closeness and of the nearness of how you are to me. And Lord, let me walk in commitment and stay committed to you. Now, here's what's interesting. Don't miss this. At in the first half of verse 6, he goes, your unfailing love will pursue me. He says, all the days of my life. Not some, not most, all the days of my life. And if you've ever studied David, David is a man of messiness, of brokenness, and of drama and dysfunction. It's easy to read and go, oh yeah, David, he's Psalm 23 David, David and Goliath, slingshot David, that's cool. But if you study all the stories in between, he had so much family dysfunction. David was a murderer and an adulterer. And God met him in his messiness and in his brokenness and in his drama and in the dysfunction of his life and moved him forward with him. Through the wonderful highs and through the horrible lows, God met David. And in the midst of your messiness and of your brokenness and of your drama and of your dysfunction, God will meet you right where you're at and take you forward in a new walk with him. And I don't know what your experience has been like with other human beings or other religious people, but my guess is if you've lived life long enough, you have certainly gotten a stiff arm from another human being. Like you're vulnerable. You tell them about your mess, you tell them about your brokenness, you tell them about the dysfunction, you tell them about the drama, and you almost kind of throw up on them and you trust them, and the response is, yikes. Whoa, good luck with that. Good luck with that issue, that work issue, that marriage issue, that kid. Good luck with that. And all of a sudden, you were vulnerable and it was responded with, I'm out. And you experience that long enough, and all of a sudden, it's easy just to overlay that onto God. And just that if you really are vulnerable to God, God's going, oh, good luck with all of that. But the reality is, it's a heavenly Father who's near and close to us and will meet you and will meet me in the middle of our messiness, brokenness, drama, and dysfunction, and will take you forward in a new walk with him. But again, so many of us and so many human beings, it's easy just to go, yikes, that's a little too messy, I'm out. But God says, no, I will meet you there and walk forward with you. When I was real little, like 5 or 6 years old, I broke my thumb and went to the doc, they x-rayed it, and they got the x-rays and they threw it up, on the little thing to show me and my mom. And I saw the broken thumb, the bone. And the instant I saw that, I just passed out. Boom, like a light. And my mom catches me. And from that moment forward, till today, now 30 plus years, I still pass out and faint at the slightest thing. Anything, if there's an x-ray, or I have to give blood, like needles are the worst, or the smell of hospitals or doctor's offices, for whatever reason, if it's messy enough, if there's a needle, if there's an x-ray, my little body looks at it and just goes, peace, I'm out. And I will just boom, like that. I mean, y'all, I have almost passed out, had to lay down in the middle of a Walgreens drugstore. Like it is that bad. And I don't even remember which kid it was one of our kids. Brianna was in labor with one of our children. And I was there, it's the doc, the nurses, and that kind of stuff. And I'm there, here we go. And all of a sudden, the nurse starts messing with Brianna's IV, a little needle over there and tape it or something like that. And I look at it, and all of a sudden, I get cold, clammy, and I turn Casper the Friendly Ghost, white as can be. And I'm like this, and I'm grabbing onto the bed like this. The nurse looks at me. She sees me, and she sends me out of the room. She's like, Dad, just go get a snack. And so I start stumbling out of the room, and in the middle of labor, I see this out of the corner of my eye, Brianna's in the middle of labor, about to give birth to one of our kids. She looks at me and just shakes her head in disgust and just disappointment. I'm about to pass out because I saw the needle, and so I go to the little dad room and get some graham crackers and some milk, and I'm trying to get the blood sugar back up, but I don't want to miss the birth of our kid. So I walk back into the labor and delivery room with a snack in hand. Listen, I have other great qualities as a dad, all right? There are some things I like. But it's one of those where it's like, it was just too much. And I think for some times you experience that with human beings, it's easy to go, well, I guess God it's just too much. And God said, no. I know you're messy. And I know you're broken. And I know there is a lot of drama going on. but I am here and I'm near and I'm close, and the response should be fully committed to what God is doing in your life. Lord, remind me of your provision, and I want to respond with contentment. Lord, remind me of your protection and guarding in my life. Lord, I want to respond and walk with courage. Lord, remind me of your proximity and how close you are. Lord, I want to respond with commitment. And so here's my question for you. Like as you go through these things, you're reminded, and all of a sudden you're reminded of God's provision in your life and his protection and his proximity and closeness. And all of a sudden there's reassurance. You begin to pray this and God begins to go, no. I'm reminding you of who I am and what I've done. So now as you walk forward in contentment and in courage and commitment, like you do so with reassurance that everything is going to be okay. And I know you're scared, and I know you're lonely, and I know you cannot see what's about to happen, but if you will trust and look back at what I've done, remember what I've done, it will reassure you of what I'm going to do. And once you receive that reassurance, then here's the question, is what's your response to God's reassurance? Once you know everything is going to be okay, then how do you respond to that? How do you respond when you're reminded of God's provision and his protection? Like, how do you respond in life? And you see David there as king writing this. And why it is such a powerful chapter is because it is one of comfort, it is one of reassurance, but it is one of David writing, being reminded of who God is. And so how do you respond to the reassurance God gives you in your life? I wrote down a few questions. And these questions, I'll be honest with you, they aren't fun to ask and answer yourself, but I think they're super helpful and super convicting. First question I wrote down is this: is the Lord's provision enough for you? Is the Lord's provision enough for you? Like when he provides your needs, is it enough? Or is it compared to theirs? It's not exactly what you wanted. Is the Lord's provision enough for you? Second thing I wrote down is this: is your courage based off of the opposition or the Lord's protection? Like your courage and your boldness, is it based off of how big or small the enemy of the opposition is? Or is it based upon the fact that the God of the universe says, I will go before you, I will guide you, and I will protect you? Third and final question is this: is your life moving toward or away from the Lord? Is your life moving toward or away from the Lord? James 4:8, draw close to God and he will draw close to you. So is your life moving closer and closer to the Lord or farther and farther from him? I was talking to some individuals right before this service, and they asked me how the first service went. I just said, I'll be very honest and transparent. It is weird to preach this and then look at a crowd at this size and realize that a lot of you are going through some of the darkest days of your life. And the idea of reassurance is one that you would like, but it's another thing to take a step of faith and go, God, I'm praying. I'm praying that you would remind me of what you've done in the past. And I'm going to walk forward with contentment. I'm going to walk forward with courage. I'm going to walk forward with totally committed to you, because I've got a reassured heart and soul of looking at what you've done in the past. But again, I don't know everybody's story, but I just certainly know in a room like this, there are some very dark days that you're in the middle of. And my prayer for you as your friend and as your pastor is you would be reminded of God's goodness and faithfulness in the past, and that you'd walk forward with reassurance of what lies ahead. I'll finish with this. It's out of Hebrews chapter 13. And it's as the writer is closing out his thoughts in Hebrews 13, he prays this prayer. And I love this prayer because he talks about who the great shepherd is in your life and in mine. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 20 and 21. The writer writes this. He says, now, may the God of peace, who brought up from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, and ratified an eternal covenant with his blood, may he equip you with all you need for doing his will. May he produce in you through the power of Jesus Christ every good thing that is pleasing to him. All glory to him forever and ever. Amen. The great shepherd is Jesus. And the writer is saying that God, who brought Jesus back from the dead, ratified the new covenant with his blood. So he's taking us back to go and remember when, so that you can go forward and walk forward doing the will of God in your life. To remembering back to the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ and what that means for you and for me. So now you and I walk forward in a new life with contentment in our soul, with courage in our heart, and with commitment to Jesus no matter what. And so in just a minute, we're going to celebrate communion as a reminder of Jesus and what he did on the cross for you and for me, with hope that reassures your heart and your soul and your mind that moving forward, he will go before you, he will guard you, he will protect you, he will provide for you, and that he is close to you. Let me pray for us. With every head bowed and every eye closed, probably most in this room at some point you've placed your faith in Jesus. But my guess is, if you're honest, you're comparing your provision to somebody else's. You're a little bit fearful because you're not in control. And maybe you're wishy-washy, and today you need to commit. And maybe just begin to work through those things in your own heart and soul. And for those of you who've never placed your faith in Jesus, the good news is that here in this moment, you can. And if you'd place your faith in Jesus for the salvation of your soul and forgiveness of your sins, you'll receive peace in your soul and hope for your life and ultimately an eternity in heaven when you die. And all you have to do is place your faith in Jesus. His death, burial, resurrection. In fact, he lived for you, died for you, and came back to life. Place your faith in him. Turn from your sins, turn to Jesus, and experience salvation today. You can say something like this. What's important is that you mean it from your heart. Just say, today, Jesus, I trust you. I ask your forgiveness for all my sins. I turn from them and turn to you. Help me to live for you from this day forward. Thank you for my salvation. Father, I pray for all of us. Forgive us for being discontent in where we're at. Forgive us for fearing opposition rather than walking in courage because of who you are. Father, forgive us for being wishy-washy in our commitment to you. But Lord, my prayer is that all of us today would be fully committed to follow after you all the days of our life. Jesus, we love you. We thank you for who you are. And ask these things in your name. Amen. You can go out and pull out your communion elements. Open up the little wafer on the bottom. Little wafer represents the body of Jesus that was broken for you and for me. So today we take it in remembrance of him. As you open up the cup of juice, it represents the blood of Jesus that was spilled for you and spilled for me. So today we take it in remembrance of him. Now, as we close our time, I just want you to sit there for a minute, and they're going to sing a song. It's a new song. I just want you to sit there and focus on the words and this idea of walking with the Lord no matter what.